Red lights. Silk ropes binding her wrists. A numbered tag hanging from her neck like she's cattle at market. Talia Ajayi stands on an auction stage in Seoul's most dangerous underground club, being sold to pay her father's gambling debts to the Korean Mafia. Wealthy criminals shout numbers 500,000, 600,000, bidding on her body, her future, her life. She refuses to cry, refuses to break. Then the door explodes open. Every head turns. A man walks in tall, commanding, a scar cutting through his eyebrow, and the room goes silent. Someone whispers his name, Kang Tae-hyun, the Reaper. He looks at her, really looks at her, and for 3 seconds that feel like eternity, their eyes lock. Then he speaks, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. $2 million. US. This auction is over. She expects violence. Expects horror. Instead, he gives her something she never imagined. A choice. This is the story of how a ruthless mafia boss bought a woman at auction, and somehow, against all logic, fell in love with her in the quietest, most unexpected ways. Hey besties, before we dive into this beautiful story, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe and like so I can share more heart-stopping stories with you tomorrow. It is your beautiful way of supporting us. Thank you all. Love you guys. Now let's begin. The underground club pulsed with bass so deep it felt like a heartbeat, red lights casting shadows across faces that didn't want to be seen. In a private room behind velvet curtains, Talia Ajayi stood on a raised platform, her wrists bound with silk rope, a numbered tag hanging from her neck like cattle at market. She kept her chin up, refused to let the tears fall, refused to give these men the satisfaction of seeing her break. 500,000. A voice called from the shadows. 600, another countered. She'd stopped listening to the numbers an hour ago. It didn't matter who bought her father's debt, who claimed ownership of her body to pay for his addiction. What mattered was surviving the next few hours, the next few days, however long it took before she could figure out how to escape this nightmare. The door burst open. Every head turned. A man walked in, tall and commanding, his presence sucking the air from the room. His suit was black and perfectly tailored, his white shirt open at the collar, revealing the edge of a tattoo that disappeared beneath the fabric. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, and his eyes were dark, cold, assessing everything with the precision of a predator. Kang Tae-hyun, someone whispered, and the room went silent. He looked at Talia, really looked at her, and something flickered across his face too quickly to read. She stared back, refusing to lower her gaze, refusing to be the first to look away. For 3 seconds that felt like eternity, their eyes locked. $2 million, he said quietly. US. This auction is over. The room erupted in whispers, but no one dared bid higher. The Reaper had spoken. 20 minutes later, Talia sat in the back of a Genesis G90, her hands finally unbound, watching Seoul's neon lights blur past the window. Tae-hyun sat beside her, his phone glowing as he typed messages she couldn't see. He hadn't spoken since they left the club. Hadn't touched her. Hadn't even looked at her. She'd heard the stories. Kang Tae-hyun controlled half of Seoul's underground, built his empire on violence and fear. Men who crossed him disappeared. Women who entered his world were never seen again. She was going to die tonight. She knew it with the certainty of someone who'd already lost everything. The car pulled into an underground garage, and they rode an elevator to the penthouse in silence. When the doors opened, Talia's breath caught despite her fear. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, modern furniture in blacks and grays, art that probably cost more than her father's debt. It was beautiful and cold, like a museum. Your room is down that hallway, second door on the left, Tae-hyun said, his voice flat. Don't try to leave. The security system is monitored 24 hours. We'll discuss the terms of your arrangement tomorrow morning at 8. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Good night. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into another wing of the penthouse, leaving her standing alone in the vast living room, confusion replacing fear. She'd expected violence. Expected him to claim what he'd bought. Instead, He'd given her a room and told her goodnight like this was a bed and breakfast, not a prison. The room he'd given her was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with 2 roommates before her father destroyed her life. A king-size bed with white linens, a sitting area, a bathroom with a soaking tub. She locked the door, tested the handle 3 times, then sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. 3 years ago, she'd come to Seoul full of dreams. She was going to be a doctor, was going to make her mother proud, was going to build a life that proved leaving Nigeria had been worth it. Then her father showed up 6 months ago, begging for a place to stay, promising he'd changed. She'd believed him because she was stupid and soft and wanted to believe family meant something. He'd stolen her savings, forged her signature on loan documents with Korean loan sharks, gambled away $500,000 in 3 months, then disappeared back to Lagos, leaving her to pay for his weakness. She'd tried to negotiate with the loan sharks, tried to explain she hadn't taken the money, hadn't even known about the debt until they showed up at her door. They didn't care. In their world, family debt was personal debt. She had 1 week to pay or face the auction. She'd worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, sold everything she owned. She'd raised $50,000. They'd laughed in her face. Now she was here, owned by the most dangerous man in Seoul, waiting to find out what he wanted from her. She didn't sleep that night. At 7:30, she showered, braided her hair with shaking hands, and put on the same clothes from yesterday because they were all she had. At exactly 8, she walked into the main living area. Tae-hyun sat at the dining table with coffee and a newspaper, dressed in a different suit, looking like he'd slept perfectly well. He glanced up when she entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "I'm going to explain how this works," he said, setting down his coffee. "You live here. You don't leave without my permission. You're available when I need you, which will primarily be for social functions where I require a companion. You'll attend dinners, events, parties. You'll smile, look beautiful, and make my competitors think I have something they want. In return, you'll be fed, clothed, housed, and protected. Your father's debt will be considered paid when I decide you've provided sufficient value. Questions? What else do you want from me?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "What do you mean?" "You bought me at an auction, Mr. Kang. I'm not stupid. What else do you expect?" Something flickered in his eyes, might have been respect. "I expect you to follow the rules I've stated. Nothing more. I don't force women into my bed, Miss Ajayi. If that changes, you'll be the first to know." She didn't believe him, but she nodded. "You speak Korean fluently," he said, switching to Korean seamlessly. "Yes," she responded in the same language. "English, Yoruba, and what else?" "Some French. Basic Mandarin." "Good. I'll have work for you translating documents. You'll be compensated separately for that." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "My housekeeper will arrive at 9 with clothes for you. Anything you need, ask her. I'll be back this evening." He left, and Talia sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched coffee, trying to understand what game he was playing. The housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, arrived exactly at 9 with shopping bags full of clothes in Talia's exact size. When Talia asked how he knew, Mrs. Choi just smiled and said, "Mr. Kang is very observant." The first week passed in surreal confusion. Tae-hyun came home late every night, sometimes with blood on his knuckles that he'd wash off in the kitchen sink like it was paint. He'd ask if she'd eaten, if she needed anything, then disappear into his office. He never touched her. Never came near her room. Never looked at her with anything resembling desire. On the 8th night, he came home with a gash across his forearm, blood soaking through his white shirt. Talia watched him stumble toward the kitchen and her medical training kicked in before her fear could stop her. "Sit down," she said, guiding him to a chair. "Let me see." He looked at her with surprise but obeyed. She cleaned the wound with supplies from the first aid kit Mrs. Choi had shown her, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "You were a medical student," he said, his voice tight with pain. "How did you know that?" "I know everything about you, Talia. Your transcripts, your scholarship, your father's betrayal. I know you were top of your class before you had to drop out. Her hands stilled on the bandage. Why would you research me? I research everything I acquire. He watched her finish wrapping his arm with careful precision. You're good at this. I wanted to be a surgeon. Wanted. Want, she corrected quietly. Still want. Will never have. He was silent for a long moment. Thank you for helping me. It was the first time he'd thanked her for anything. The first time he'd said her name without the formal distance. Something shifted between them in that moment, small but undeniable. The next morning, she woke to find medical textbooks stacked outside her door. New editions, expensive, comprehensive. No note. No explanation. Just books that cost thousands of dollars, left like they were nothing. 2 weeks in, one of Tae-hyun's men made a comment in Korean about the African girl warming the boss's bed. He said it in front of her, thinking she wouldn't understand. Before she could respond, Tae-hyun appeared from nowhere, grabbed the man by the throat, and slammed him against the wall. Apologize to her, Tae-hyun said, his voice deadly quiet. Then pack your things. You don't work for me anymore. The man stammered an apology, terror in his eyes. Tae-hyun released him, then turned to Talia. Are you all right? His voice had gone soft, concerned, completely different from the violence of 3 seconds ago. She nodded, unable to speak. He studied her face, then addressed the room full of his men who'd witnessed the scene. Miss Ajayi is under my protection. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me personally. Are we clear? A chorus of yes, sir, echoed through the room. Later that night, Talia found him on the penthouse balcony, smoking a cigarette and staring at the city lights. You didn't have to do that, she said, stepping outside. Yes, I did. Why? I can handle cruel words. I've had worse. He turned to look at her, and in the moonlight, his face looked younger, almost vulnerable. You shouldn't have to handle it. Not in my house. Not from my people. I'm just property you bought, Mr. Kang. Why do you care if people disrespect me? You're not property. His voice was sharp. You're a person who was betrayed by someone who should have protected you. I won't add to that betrayal by allowing my people to treat you as less than human. Something in her chest cracked open. Who hurt you? He laughed, bitter and cold. Everyone. My father abandoned my mother when she got pregnant. She worked herself to death trying to raise me. I was 8 when she died. I grew up in the gang because I had nowhere else to go. I built this empire from blood and violence because it was the only language anyone taught me. He took a drag from his cigarette. I'm not a good man, Talia. But I understand what it's like to be thrown away by people who should have valued you. I won't do that to you. She stood beside him in silence, watching the city breathe below them, 2 broken people trying to survive in a world that had decided they were worthless. 3 weeks in, Tae-hyun told her she'd be accompanying him to a charity gala. Mrs. Choi brought a dress, deep emerald green that made her skin glow, elegant and expensive. When Talia walked into the living room, Tae-hyun looked up from his phone and went completely still. You look beautiful, he said, and for the first time, she heard something warm in his voice. The gala was held at a hotel so luxurious it made Talia's head spin. Tae-hyun kept his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through crowds of Korea's elite, criminals and businessmen mixing together like the line between them didn't exist. The other women stared at her. Some with curiosity, some with barely concealed disgust. She heard the whispers, saw the judgment, felt the weight of being the only black woman in a room full of people who'd decided she didn't belong before she ever opened her mouth. Is it true you bought her at auction, Tae-hyun? A woman in a red dress asked, loud enough for others to hear. How exotic. Talia felt Tae-hyun's hand tighten on her back, but she spoke before he could. It's true, she said in perfect Korean, her voice calm and clear. Mr. Kang paid my father's debt when no one else would. I'm grateful for his generosity, even if the circumstances were unfortunate. But I suppose we all do what we must to survive in this world, don't we? Though some of us have to work harder than others to prove we deserve the space we occupy. The woman's smile froze. Others nearby tried to hide their reactions. Talia held her ground, refused to look away first. Tae-hyun's hand moved from her back to her waist, pulling her closer. "If you'll excuse us," he said coldly and led Talia away. In the elevator heading home hours later, he finally spoke. "You're stronger than all of them. They know it. That's why they fear you." "I don't feel strong. I feel tired." Strength isn't about never being tired. It's about standing tall even when exhaustion is crushing you. He looked at her, really looked at her. "You've been standing tall since the moment I saw you on that stage. You never begged. Never cried. Never broke. That's why I bought you. I don't understand." "I saw myself in your eyes. Someone fighting to survive in a world that decided you're worthless. I wanted to see what you'd become if someone gave you the chance to be more than your circumstances." The elevator doors opened to the penthouse. They stood in the hallway, the air between them charged with something neither of them wanted to name. "Thank you," she whispered. "For tonight. For defending me. For seeing me." "Talia," he said, and the way her name sounded on his lips made her heart stutter. "You're not invisible. You never were." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing alone, wondering when this started feeling less like captivity and more like something dangerously close to home. Are you feeling this tension, family? If you want to see where this forbidden love goes, you need to hit that like button right now. Seriously, show this video some love. Let me know in the comments if you think Talia should trust him or run. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join the family. We're just getting started. For weeks in, Talia woke screaming from a nightmare. In the dream, she was back on the auction stage, but this time no one bid. They just watched her stand there, forgotten, worthless. She jerked awake, gasping, her heart racing. A soft knock on her door made her freeze. "Talia." Tae-hyun's voice concerned. "Are you all right?" She couldn't answer, was still trying to remember how to breathe. "I'm coming in," he said, and the door opened. He stood in the doorway in sleep pants and a t-shirt, his hair messy, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Bad dream." She nodded, wiping her eyes. He walked to the chair by her window and sat down, maintaining distance. "I get them too. The past doesn't let go easily." "What do you dream about?" she asked. "My mother. The night she died. I was too young to save her, too weak to change anything. I watched her fade away and couldn't do anything but hold her hand." His voice was raw, unguarded. "Every night, I dream I'm 8 years old again, completely powerless. I dream about the auction. About being sold like I'm nothing." "You're not nothing." "How do you know?" "You barely know me." He was quiet for a long moment. "I know you help Mrs. Choi with the cleaning even though you don't have to. I know you're studying those medical textbooks I left you every night until 3 a.m. I know you've been sending money to your mother in Nigeria even though you're living as my captive. I know you're kind and brilliant and stronger than you believe." "That's not nothing, Talia. That's everything." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this? Really? There has to be a reason beyond sympathy. Because when I saw you on that stage, I saw what I could have been if someone had chosen to help me instead of use me. I can't change my past, but maybe I can change your future." He stood to leave. "Try to sleep. I'll be right outside your door if you need anything." "Wait," she said. "Will you stay? Just for a little while? I don't want to be alone." He hesitated, then moved back to the chair. "I'll stay until you fall asleep." She lay back down, her eyes on him, watching the way moonlight cut across his face, softening his sharp edges. "Tae-hyun?" "Yes. Thank you for choosing me that night. I'd choose you again. Every time." She fell asleep with his voice wrapped around her like protection, and when she woke at dawn, he was gone, but there was a blanket draped over her that hadn't been there before. 5 weeks in, everything changed. Talia was walking back from the corner store. Mrs. Choi had asked her to pick up ingredients for dinner, one of the few freedoms she'd been granted, when a black van pulled up beside her. The door slid open, hands grabbed her, pulled her inside before she could scream. A cloth pressed over her mouth, chemical sweet, and the world went dark. She woke in a warehouse, her head pounding, zip ties cutting into her wrists. A man sat across from her, smoking a cigarette, his smile cruel. "The Reaper's little pet," he said in Korean. "Lee Min-suk. Pleasure to meet you. What do you want?" Her voice was steady despite her terror. I want Kang Tae-hyun to understand that going soft makes you vulnerable. He should have never let you walk around unguarded. Should have never let anyone see that he cares about something other than power. Min-suk leaned forward. When he comes for you, and he will come, I'll kill him. Then I'll take his empire, and you'll watch before I decide what to do with you. He won't come. I'm just property he bought. If that were true, you wouldn't be here. My men have been watching. They've seen the way he looks at you. The way he protects you. The Reaper has a weakness now, and that weakness is you. Hours passed. Maybe days, she couldn't tell in the windowless room. Min-suk's men took turns watching her, some looking at her with hunger that made her skin crawl. She kept her face blank, refused to show fear, refused to give them anything. Then she heard it. Gunfire. Shouting. The sound of violence getting closer. The door exploded inward. Tae-hyun stood in the doorway, gun in hand, blood splattered across his face and suit, his eyes wild with something that looked like terror and rage combined. Behind him, bodies littered the hallway. Talia, he breathed, and the relief in his voice cracked something in her chest. Min-suk appeared behind her, gun pressed to her temple. One more step and she dies. Tae-hyun froze. For 3 seconds, everything was silent. Let her go, Tae-hyun said, his voice deadly calm. Take me instead. I'm what you want. You're not what I want. I want you to feel what it's like to lose something that matters. Min-suk's finger moved toward the trigger. Talia didn't think. She threw her head back, connecting with Min-suk's nose. He stumbled, gun wavering. Tae-hyun moved like lightning, 3 shots fired in rapid succession. Min-suk dropped. Tae-hyun rushed forward, cutting the zip ties from her wrists, his hands shaking as he checked her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Talia, talk to me. I'm okay. I'm okay. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm okay. He pulled her against his chest, his heart hammering beneath her ear. I thought I lost you. When I came home and Mrs. Choi said you never returned, I thought, his voice broke. I can't lose you. You found me. I burned down half the city looking for you. I would have burned it all. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Tae-hyun's men appeared in the doorway. Boss, we need to go. They drove back to the penthouse in silence, Tae-hyun's hand gripping hers so tightly it hurt, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. When they arrived, he led her to the bathroom, started the shower, and left her to clean the blood and fear from her skin. When she emerged, he was sitting on her bed, his head in his hands. I put you in danger, he said without looking up. Min-suk was right. Caring about you made you a target. I should have kept you at distance. Should have never, he stopped himself. Should have never what? She sat beside him. Should have never let myself feel anything for you. Her heart stopped. What do you feel? He finally looked at her and his eyes were raw, stripped of all defenses. Everything. I feel everything for you. From the moment I saw you on that stage, refusing to break, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Every night you spend in this penthouse, every conversation we have, every time you look at me like I'm more than the monster everyone knows me to be, I fall deeper. And it terrifies me because people I care about get hurt. My mother died because of my father's cruelty. Everyone I've ever, he stopped, shook his head. I can't let that happen to you. So what are you saying? Your debt is paid. It was paid the first week. I've been lying to you, keeping you here because I'm selfish and I wanted you near me. But after tonight, I can't do this anymore. You can go. Back to Nigeria, back to medical school, anywhere you want. I'll give you money, protection, whatever you need. But you have to leave because staying near me will get you killed. Talia stared at him, her mind racing. She could leave. Could walk away from this dangerous world, from this complicated man, from the fear and violence. Could go back to her life, to her dreams, to safety. But safety had never felt like home the way this penthouse did. Safety had never looked at her the way Tae-hyun did. Safety had never made her heart race and her soul quiet at the same time. What if I don't want to leave? She whispered. His head snapped up. Talia, you can't. What if I told you that I've been falling too? That somewhere between the nightmares and the medical textbooks and the midnight conversations, I stopped seeing you as my captor and started seeing you as the first person who ever chose me. Not because of what I could give him, not because I was useful, but just because he saw me and decided I was worth something. You deserve better than a life in the shadows with a man covered in blood. Maybe I deserve to choose for myself what kind of life I want. She moved closer, her hand reaching for his. You gave me back my power, Tae-hyun. You gave me choices when I had none. And I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this. Even knowing it's dangerous, even knowing it's complicated, I'm choosing us. You could die. I almost died in that warehouse. You saved me. You came for me when you could have let Min-suk solve your problem for you. You chose me too. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. I don't know how to do this. How to love someone without destroying them. Then we'll figure it out together. We'll build something new that isn't about debt or obligation or survival. We'll build something real. He kissed her then, desperate and tender and full of everything they'd been holding back for weeks. She kissed him back, pouring 5 weeks of longing and fear and hope into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. If you stay, really stay, things have to change. I can't keep living the way I have been. I can't risk you like this. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to step back from the violent side of the business. Focus on the legitimate operations. It won't be overnight, and there will still be danger, but I want to try. For you. For us. For the life we could build together. You'd do that. I'd do anything for you. I'd burn the world down or rebuild it from ashes, whatever you needed. You make me want to be better than my worst impulses. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. She kissed him again, softer this time. I love you. I don't know when it happened, somewhere between fear and trust, but I love you. I love you too. So much it terrifies me. They spent that night talking, making plans, figuring out how to navigate a relationship built on impossible circumstances. He told her about legitimate businesses he'd been building on the side, investments and properties that could sustain them without the violence. She told him about her dreams of finishing medical school, of opening a clinic that served people who couldn't afford care. I'll fund it, he said immediately. Your education, your clinic, whatever you need. I don't want to be another thing you buy. You're not. You're the person I choose to invest in because I believe in you. Because watching you succeed will be better than any business victory I've ever had. As dawn painted the sky gold and pink, they stood at the window overlooking the city, his arms wrapped around her from behind, both of them marveling at the impossibility of their love. 6 months later, Talia walked across the stage in a cap and gown, her medical degree finally complete. Tae-hyun sat in the front row, pride radiating from his smile. Her mother had flown in from Nigeria, had met the man who saved her daughter, and decided he was worthy despite everything. The clinic opened 3 months after that in a neighborhood that desperately needed it. Talia treated patients who reminded her of herself, people trying to survive impossible circumstances, people who needed someone to see them as human. Tae-hyun had kept his promise. He'd stepped back from the violent operations, delegated to trusted people, focused on building legitimate businesses. There were still dangers, still enemies, but they faced them together. 1 year after the auction, Tae-hyun took her back to that club, to that private room behind velvet curtains. But this time, the room was filled with flowers, candles, soft music. A year ago, I walked into this room and saw you refusing to break, he said, taking her hands. I told myself I was saving you, but the truth is you saved me. You taught me that power means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up. You taught me that love is braver than violence. You taught me that broken people can heal each other if they're willing to try. He dropped to one knee, pulled out a ring that caught the candlelight. Marry me. Not because of debt or obligation or survival. Marry me because you choose me and I choose you. Because we built something real from impossible circumstances. Because I want to spend the rest of my life proving that the best decision I ever made was pointing at you in that conference room and saying, I want her. Talia laughed through her tears. Yes. 1,000 times yes. They kissed in the room where their story began, 2 people who'd been told they were worthless, who'd found worth in each other's eyes. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the penthouse garden with their closest people. Mrs. Choi cried. Tae-hyun's men gave respectful bows. Talia's mother gave a blessing in Yoruba that made everyone tear up even though most didn't understand the words. When Talia and Tae-hyun stood facing each other, speaking vows they'd written themselves, the past felt very far away. You saw me when I was invisible, Talia said, her voice strong. You gave me back my power when I'd forgotten I had any. You loved me before I loved myself again. I promise to spend our life together reminding you every day that you're not the monster the world thinks you are. You're the man who chose kindness over profit. Who chose me when it made no sense. I love you completely. Thank you for choosing me. Tae-hyun's voice was rough with emotion. You taught me that walls keep us trapped as much as they keep others out. You showed me that power means nothing if we don't use it to lift others up. You made me want to be worthy of your love, your trust, your future. I promise to spend every day proving that choosing you was the best decision I ever made. I love you, Talia. Thank you for choosing me back. When they kissed, sealing promises that would last a lifetime, their small gathering erupted in applause. That night, dancing in their penthouse under stars that witnessed their beginning, Talia looked up at her husband and smiled. What are you thinking? Tae-hyun asked. That we're going to have an incredible story to tell our children someday. About how their father saw their mother when everyone else looked through her. About how their mother taught their father that power means nothing if you don't use it to build something good. About how two broken people healed each other. He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her forehead. About how we saved each other. We did, didn't we? We did. They danced until the moon hung high and bright, until the only sound was music and heartbeats and whispered promises of forever. Talia Ajayi and Kang Tae-hyun, two people who'd been told they were worthless in different ways, two people who'd chosen each other when the world said they shouldn't, had finally found their worth in each other's arms. They were home. Family, if you made it to the end of this incredible journey, you're the real ones. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we have so many more stories of love, redemption, and choosing each other against all odds. Smash that like button to help this video reach more people who need to hear this story. And drop a comment telling me what you loved most about Talia and Tae-hyun's journey. What would you have done in their situation? Would you have chosen love or safety? Let me know below. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love to transform even the darkest circumstances. And remember, every woman deserves a man who chooses her, not because he has to, but because he can't imagine choosing anyone else.